Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. A second, please.
I second.
Okay. So Pam, you said I see two other people in the listed besides Kevin, so.
So David Ropiak is the new member of our committee who is being who is replacing Dottie West for the Board of Health. And Carlin Reed is on the Finance Committee, and she was in the habit of going to the task force meetings and is on so I think she's kind of attending for the Finance Committee.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Thank you both thank you, Caroline, for joining us, and David, thank you for joining the committee. The first thing on the agenda is to approve the meetings from September 20th. Any comments on the minutes?
They look good to me.
I had one question, Pam, and it was related to the last page, at least the way it printed out for me. And it said, and this might have just been something that needs to be cut off the bottom and the way it showed up, but the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Friday, October 18th. The meeting was adjourned, and then it said, accept the minutes question by 222 Main Street Oversight Committee.
Okay, so the way that the town wants minutes written, that is the date, which will be today's date if we accept them.
Okay, so
it will replace the question mark.
Okay, so that is now.
The other thing was the meeting recording also had a blank in one of the versions I sent out, but I actually found the meeting recording, so it's in the version that's in the meeting packet that's online.
Okay. I have no other comments than that on the minutes, so.
And you want to make a motion to accept?
So I will make a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Ray.
Thank you, Lynn.
And I think you have to poll the committee to vote.
Yes, so all in favor say aye.
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 And Dave, I don't know if you're technically in yet, but
I would have to abstain. I wasn't there. I don't know. Can't comment.
that's fine, but I just want to make sure you appreciate that, you know, as a member from another committee representing on the thing, that you are a voting member, or at least that is our understanding. We have not been corrected
He's
as
a voting
such.
member. He's saying he's abstaining because he's.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
But going forward, that, so.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So, thank you. Okay, moving on to new discussion of new documents and new issues. We received since in the last month, 3 documents from the EPA. I know David potentially might have received that, yet had not received, but did everybody else have an opportunity to at least receive the letter of October 2nd from the EPA to DeMaxis and the response from DeMaxis back to the EPA on the let me pull them up, make sure I got the proper titles here.
That's the 60% holding basin remedial design.
Yes, so
I got that one, and I got the annual groundwater report. What's the third one, Ray?
So the first one was the letter from the EPA of October 2nd regarding the 60% design, and the second one is the Maximus response to that letter, and that was dated on December 2nd.
Right, I got that right here. Yep.
Okay,
And we commented on that first one, didn't we? And that
We did. We had some limited comments on that.
That's in our meeting packet, isn't it?
It should be, yeah.
It is, yes.
Okay.
And
Our
my.
comments.
Yeah.
Problem
it's-
with two screens. My question, having reviewed the Maximus comments backs, is Len, in reviewing that, did you have any questions on what they had? And the one in particular I wanted to draw your attention to was on page 3, where the EPA comment number 4, wall mix design, and our request of information on the plastic cement. Were you satisfied with their answer?
I don't know very much about plastic cement. I'm not all that confident that, the bentonite mix is gonna stay, have integrity for over a long period of time. Just from my experience, that's all I can go by. But I've just seen, instances where the bentonite, in concrete, has dried out over time in monitoring wells. So they're, I mean, at least they're looking at it, according to their response. So it's on their radar screen, and they don't think that that's gonna be the case, where it'll dry out. I think it'll be okay. But I'm wondering if there's any way that they can, going forward, once the mix is in place, if there's any way that they can, monitor the integrity of it. Whether or not it's dried out, whether it's cracked, if that's a possibility.
So, my question, was it Bob Van Dyke who was the cement guy at Crew who knew about these things? Because I thought he was the one pushing for bentonite, that there was somebody at Crew.
I think there was,
pushing
I
for
think that
bentonite.
was Doug. I think that was Doug Gifford.
Is he still around?
I haven't heard from Doug in years. So I don't think
Okay.
he's still involved in this.
Because I thought they were pushing for bentonite because it's likely to be the most flexible of the kinds of cement that they put in there. So it would be the one most likely to survive if there were something like an earthquake or earth movement or something like that.
Well, there's different kinds of bentonite they could use. But again, once it's in and it's covered, by the cap, and it's above the water table, I'm just wondering if there's any way that they can monitor it.
Is that something we can?
Kevin, what do you think about that? The bentonite drying out over time.
It's a possibility, for stuff that's above the water table.
Yeah,
Below the water table, I don't see that really being an issue. I'd say it's a possibility, but I don't know how much weight to assign to it. I don't know what kind of monitoring they would do, or what they would conduct in response to the monitoring if such monitoring were to indicate an issue. I don't know. I just don't know what they would do specifically if they would have, because once the cap is in, it'll be pretty sealed.
right, yeah.
And I don't think, or I'd have to think about, a solution would be to somehow put water into that area, but I don't know if we want any kind of, penetrations that would go through the cap or the wall or something that would, potentially inject something. I just don't know if we'd want to, if that would be a good thing to have. I haven't really thought much about it, so.
I would say let's put the question to the Maximus.
I would say let's postpone the question till we get the 95% design. Is that reasonable, Kevin?
It's just the 95% design, it's gonna be almost a done deal at that point. The 60%, I think, is where we have to ask the big picture questions.
Well, so Len, and this is showing my ignorance, EPA comment number 3 related to the piezometer installation. And I realize that from my understanding, it's located outside, but that looks like that is at least one method they're attempting to monitor stuff, but it's not specifically to the, the wall design and how that will go forward. And likewise, I guess the question is, they've got a bunch of things up in the air of what they're potentially going to do.
I mean, they don't even have a method yet, or it depends
Yeah,
on the
so-
contractor that they hire. As, as for the details of how this is all gonna go together. But it was a thought about the bentonite, if there's some way that they could monitor it and to make sure that it, it has integrity over the long term.
Fred, may I ask a question? You seem familiar with various types of bentonite. From my old TV reporter days back in the 80s and 90s, they were using bentonite to do this kind of thing back then. I would imagine there's quite a track record on the performance of this material that they're choosing to use. What is it that gives you pause about the cracking that apparently they don't worry about?
It just, again, it's personal experience. I've done a lot of well installation, a lot of sampling of wells. And there were sites where I would go back and sample a well or inspect a well that hadn't been touched in probably 20 years. And when you remove the cover, the first thing you see is cracked bentonite above the water table. So that's just a personal observation of mine. I mean, obviously they're thinking about it, so it's on their radar screen, but
So we think there might be some way of monitoring what the concrete underground is doing on its own without just looking for whether there's something getting out of it.
yeah, if it's above the water table, there's nothing that should migrate out. But
But water
It's
tables
a-
rise and fall over time, so.
right, water tables rise and fall. That's right. They do.
And I'm not wondering, I think I'm with Kevin on this, is that this might not be something we want to put a lot of weight on worrying about compared to some of the other issues that we had.
Well, it's an issue. And they're trying to address it. I guess a lot of it depends on what type of bentonite they use. But I don't know, is it possible that they could use some type of radio frequency to monitor the width of the wall above the water table? Because if it cracks, the width is gonna change. If they
Except
can
for-
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my question, Len, on that is, I can see them doing that at points, but I mean, does the cracking occur uniformly? So therefore, you pick, hypothetically, you pick 6 spots to monitor it, and it cracks in between. What are you getting? My reaction at this point would be to wait to see on the next update what they're ultimately going to do, and then drill down for more details on that if we think they're necessary. So, and because this,
It would be fair to point out that there's someone with personal experience on the committee, and that we have a concern in this area, and we want them to assure us that the type of material that's being used isn't subject to this problem.
yeah, I mean, we can send the comment back. I mean, so.
Just like that. I mean, sort of put it back on them to.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll let them.
So we're
we
gonna
should-
expect them to address it in the 95%.
But we have to ask them to.
You think we should?
I do, yes.
Okay.
They may even address it before that, in another rendition of the response to comments. So
They
this
will?
it may come even before the 90. I'd like to see them address it before the 95%.
Yeah, I
just-
mean, I wouldn't suggest solutions. I would just say we have a concern
Yeah.
based on experience, because we've seen cracking in the past in dry conditions.
So we're gonna send in comments?
Yeah, I think we should say something about the 60% because, they're narrowing the amount of, distance that they want to penetrate into bedrock to
But
3 feet.
you did write comments already, and it
I
already
did.
has this comment in there.
Well, it doesn't have the comment about the 3 feet, because this, that's a new one. They
About
just
the
came
what?
up with that.
Oh, that was, okay. So the
Uh,
bentonite can dry out and crack is one, so you're wondering if there's monitoring.
yeah, if there's some way that they can monitor it.
Or use a
can-
material that's not subject to that problem. What,
Yeah.
Yeah.
does he have a
changing-
concern?
Yeah,
It's up to them to propose a
Right.
solution.
The trouble is, 200 years is a long time. And there's not much that stays intact after 200 years.
Nothing.
We wanna try to make this as foolproof as possible. But I agree, I think that, let's put it on them. It's not our job to tell them what to do. It's for us to propose questions and them to, come up with answers.
so there was something new in the latest version?
Well,
that
there
you-
was, they want to, this is, on page, it's actually on the first page. They originally said that, they were gonna advance 5 feet into bedrock. And now, on the 60% RD, they're saying that they want to, only advance 3 feet into bedrock. I mean, a lot of it's gonna depend on hydraulic conductivity. Where is the bedrock fractured? How deep is it fractured? What's the hydraulic conductivity compared to, the till? But it just seems that they're
Okay, were there any other comments you had about that?
I haven't completely looked at the comments, but those are the couple of things that come to mind anyway. We have until, let's see, we have until
I think it's the 12th, is it the 12th? Am I looking?
Monday the 13th to get our comments to Kara.
And changing the 5 feet key in to 3 feet, do we have a sense of whether that is actually makes a difference?
Again, it's gonna depend on the hydraulic conductivity. But it's more of a safety margin if you have 5 feet rather than 3 feet. I mean, what they're saying here, and I'm reading from the second page. Let me just, the review of core bedrock and downhole images show rock conditions near the surface to be intact and fresh. Indicating a low potential for a water flow through the bedrock. So obviously, if it's that intact and that fresh, you'd probably wanna key it into bedrock.
So, Kevin, is crew also gonna be producing a response to EPA's comments for the 60% holding basin?
I have it on my list as one of the things I'm reviewing between now and, over the holidays, before that's due on the 13th. So,
Are these
I-
two things that you would have cared about to comment about?
yeah, I previously provided comments about the change in the embedment depth to EPA. No, I have some, the concerns I have, I think are, as you folks have recognized that, changing that embedment depth, I think in theory can be okay, but in some of the practicalities of actually having that work, we want to make sure that if the embedment depth is shallower, that doesn't now create a problem where there could be leakage out from under there. So in theory, it could work, but the practicalities can be different. So I had some concerns about, particularly with them establishing what their criteria were for refusal, because that was another one of the components that was in there. And I know that EPA in their comments had taken some of those concern or some of those comments that I had put in, and they had incorporated that into their concern. So I think that I looked through the response to comment or the EPA comments when they came out. I haven't looked through the other components in detail yet. On the list for the holiday
Okay.
season.
So you're gonna be at least making those comments to them, so they'll get those comments from you from crew as well.
Fred, I just scanned an EPA document researching how well bentonite walls perform at hazardous waste sites. A study of 36 of, this was published in 2022. A study of 36 of them found that most performed fine. They couldn't figure out whether the others performed okay, but the testing was all, did they leak? There was no examination of the material itself to see if it had cracks in it. The metric they were looking for was, did they leak?
David, this is one of those situations where, Len's experiences with test wells where they're not measuring outside of the well whether something's getting through it or not. And in our situation, we have a double system here. We have a system where they're going to be adding materials inside the holding basin to make it so that the uranium won't move, even if there's water there, and then they're surrounding it. And so you may not be able to see if one of the two systems fails. So that was why the question is, I mean, just it's not that this hasn't been used, and it hasn't been used for 200 years. So that is what the lifetime of the wall is supposed to be, is between 200 and 1,000. Some of the things say 1,000. So just the 200 is kind of all that could possibly be considered practical.
I just can't visualize something lasting for 200 years, let alone 1,000 years. But,
Yeah.
I mean, we have to give it the best chance that we can.
Yeah.
I think so. So both of their systems have to work.
How deep is the groundwater there?
I haven't looked at it for a while, but I think it's about 30 feet.
Okay.
My purpose of the comment was only that the only metric that they used to test to see whether the wall had worked was exterior leakage. Just commenting on the ways they would test the things that Len's raising. The way they went
Yeah.
about doing that in this particular study was, did it leak?
Yeah. It's
So
a
I
challenge.
one thing I think you guys are probably aware or is that in EPA's October 2nd comment letter, the wall mix design was one of their comments, and specifically about bentonite drying out and cracking. And DeMaximus's December 2 response to comments has a response to that. I have not gone through that in detail yet, though, but just I would, it would probably be worthwhile to take a look through their response to that comment.
This is EPA comment number 4, the wall mix design.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously thinking about it, which is a good sign. But that's what we have so far, is the fact that they're thinking about it, and they're trying to put together a system that's not gonna, where the integrity is gonna hold on. It's gonna hold, so, but it's good that they're thinking about it. I just was wondering, just maybe take it a step further, and if there's some way that they could, I don't know, maybe somehow using a radio transmitter, just measure the size of the fractures, if there are any, and if they, in the wall, and because if the wall fractures, it's gonna change the width of the wall, I would think. So maybe there's some way that they can test that.
So maybe the way we couch it is we appreciate that they're looking at this but ask the question about, had they contemplated how to measure the wall or some, I don't know exact wording, but or to monitor the wall integrity, sort of going back to that, their thing too, so.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point.
So,
Do
And
you,
it-
Ray, do you actually have a sense of the two things that we want to make comments about right now?
yes,
Okay,
so I will draft something up, Pam, and shoot it to the committee afterwards to,
I'd actually like to review the response to the December 2nd response to comments. We have, until the 13th to get those comments to Kara. There might be, the comments were pretty comprehensive. I'd like to, in case I missed something the first time, I went through them quickly the first time around. I'd like
totally
to,
understand.
so Ray's gonna draft comments that we mentioned today, send them to Len. He will add more and come back to you and get his comments back to you to submit, Ray,
Yes.
right?
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think it would take any more than a few days. The holiday season's kind of cut into everything, but, you know, I mean, it won't take long to look through the rest of the stuff. I guess I've already done a quick review of it, but, just in case I miss something, if I have anything else pops into my mind. If that's okay.
I'm totally fine with that. And this gets back to the, trying to make sure we stick with the open meeting laws, but I think, sharing as we go forward. Sending the comments, and likewise, as Kevin said also, I mean, this, and you've said also, I mean, there's pretty extensive comments back and fairly technical in nature also, so, and making sure we're not missing something.
So Ray, are you concerned that this shouldn't be going through the whole committee before it goes back to
No,
Kara?
I think we should, Pam.
Okay.
I'm just trying, so, but.
So anybody who so Ray is gonna draft comments, he's gonna send them out to the whole committee. Gwen's going to comment back, and that might include adding something to the comments.
Right.
Anyone else who has comments can send them back, but if you send them back to follow the public meeting law, you send them only to Ray.
Right.
And then Ray will send in the comments to Kara in time, and those comments, like our last comments, will be part of the next meeting packet so that we can share that, so there'll be a public record of them. That's the procedure, right, Ray?
That's how I'm gonna go back and look at the rules, but that's how I understand it, Pam.
Yeah. I believe that's what we've been doing to try to keep these comments both public, but also following the public meeting law when we're drafting them between meetings.
And adding the added wrinkle, the underlying documents are not public.
Right.
What about the latest groundwater monitoring report? That's comments due to Kara on January 6th. I for one haven't even taken a look at that. I wonder if anybody has looked at that and has any preliminary comments.
So, I actually, have some concern. I looked through it, was a little disappointed that there wasn't more PFAS information in there. Because one of the things we want is we want them to consider whether PFAS should be a chemical of concern at this site. And so, I think our committee commented that we wanted to see that after this round of sampling was done. You know, this round of sampling was done
Right.
by April, and so it's been a while since they did the sampling, and we want to be part of a discussion about what gets sampled in next year's sampling. So my question is, did I read that right, Kevin? Have you looked over it enough to be able to tell? It's not that we want to make comments about this particular sampling. I don't think there was anything of concern in it as opposed to what wasn't mentioned at all.
Well, just so my high level take and skimming through this, I wasn't surprised that they didn't talk about PFAS in this report, because my understanding is that they're not planning to do their PFAS sampling until next year as part of the annual sampling for 2025.
Okay.
And that's in part because this sampling was conducted in April, and that's about when the new EPA limits came out. And so I wasn't surprised that this report looks like it's just sort of a data presentation associated with the sampling that was completed, and not I'm not surprised that they didn't wade into PFAS and PFAS as a COC, because I think that they're holding until they get the data from next year. So at least when I looked at it, I was not surprised. That doesn't mean that it's not an issue, but I wasn't surprised that it's not in this report.
Do we want them to be having a meeting like in February where we can all discuss what we want to see in the sampling next year?
I think that'd be good to have. I mean, likewise, I missed the last meeting there, but propose some items that we want to talk about with them.
Well, for the past couple of years, we've had a kind of a site summary meeting in March at the trailer. That's a couple months away from now. So maybe if you kind of follow suit, we have a site meeting in March, and we can talk about.
If they have a plan to sample in April, don't we want to be having the meeting sooner than that?
Or Pam, or in the alternative, we send them something in January of like, these are the things we would like to discuss in March, and make it clear that that is one of the topics we want to talk about.
Okay, so the comments to the 2024 water quality report are due January 6th.
Right.
And I don't see that anyone, I mean, we've had this document since the beginning of December. Does anybody think we need to comment more besides we want more information about PFAS in the next sampling?
I'd like to look it over, whether I'll have time to, within the next couple of weeks when it's due. I don't know, Christmas is next week, but, I can try to get to it for like, a week after Christmas.
So
And
January.
just take a
yeah.
look at, then that'll be the 6th of January. No, that'll be, the 1st of January. So 1 week after Christmas.
So we want to be sure that any community update meeting that discusses the water, that there will be a community update meeting that discusses what the specifics of what the water sampling program is going to look like for PFAS for 2025. And we want to be sure that's in time to make it different. That's going to be early enough to actually, that our comments can be incorporated into that, right?
Yeah, my attack would be to, and Pam, I don't, based on my lack of understanding of water and general stuff, I had no comments based on my review so far. My thought process is that we comment back that we have, depending on what Len finds, we have no comments on this, but some statement along the lines of, we hope, or we look forward to comments on PFAP in the next report, or something like that, commenting back to this report, one, and then two, send something to both EPA and DeMaxis in January saying, you know, for the meeting in March, we likewise come up with a bunch of things we want to hope they touch upon, including this issue. So,
Well, let's ask them what their plan is for April. I mean, I'm sure they're putting it together at this point.
So-
Let's ask them for an idea of what they're gonna be sampling for in April.
yeah, so, and to be discussed in March, but
Right, yeah, no, that's fine.
Is that something you're gonna put together, Ray?
I will attempt on that one, but I will send it by you to make sure I properly capture that, Pam.
Okay, so you want to incorporate anything else that Lynn has from the.
Yeah.
Or do you foresee having any comments about that, Nick?
No.
David, do you want to actually see this? It's like 800 pages of tables of numbers.
Oh, gosh, please. No, thank you.
We'll get you on the list though, so that you'll automatically get it, so that it can fill you. It's actually something you click on and you can download it, or you can just look at it at the site. It doesn't fill your inbox with the materials, so.
It has,
Thank you.
it
Oh,
has,
I know Bruce from the task force, Bruce had talked about how they had paid attention to PFAS and had a sense that it wouldn't be a problem on the site. I wonder whether there's, in this message that we want to send them, a way of inquiring what he was talking about. The task force didn't press him on that. It was just a casual reference, but if there's been some attention paid to it, what and how do they know? And that might inform our interest in them doing more.
So the history on that one is that, in fact, when they created the new federal rules about the various PFAS chemicals, there are a couple of wells that are showing hits much above the drinking water standard for PFAS, but for some of the PFAS compounds at the site. There is one compound that was not tested for as part of their screening in the first place. So they will have to test for those. They have to decide if these are chemicals of concern that are related to the actual site, or whether they are something that naturally occurs because of rainfall at the site. And the advantage of knowing is that even if it's rainfall, as long as you're collecting that as part of the pump and treat for the other chemicals at the site, that the charcoal pre-filters on the current pump and treat systems for 1,4-dioxane and for the TCE breakdown products that are at the site actually takes the PFAS compounds out. It's actually cheaper to do that than it is the 1,4-dioxane, which requires a charcoal pre-filter and then more treatment in order to get that out. So this is something that we've been discussing back and forth as the details come in, because technically PFAS compounds are not chemicals of concern at the site because they weren't part of the original sampling, and they didn't have drinking water standards left. And nobody's drinking this water. So there's no standard for what you can leave in groundwater. Did I get that right, Kevin?
Yeah, no, that's right.
And the filters catch it anyway?
They do, but they may not be collecting from all of the site. They're collecting from the TCE and the former TCE and the 1,4-dioxane plumes.
Huh.
And we don't have a lot of TCE at this site. You may have heard of TCE, just got bumped up to a new take it out of everything thing. What we have at the site are 4 or 5 chemicals that are breakdown products of TCE. So they use TCE, but it's not there anymore. But other things that are still toxic are the other volatile organics are still there that need to be removed. So
Yeah, I don't think that the PFAS is, you know, by the time that they finished putting up the groundwater, the 1,4-dioxane and the TCE, it's gonna, you know, the PFAS will probably be long gone
Yeah.
anyway. But this is a good point, because this kind of shows how they're gonna respond in the case that some other unknown new chemical shows up in the future, how
Yeah.
are they gonna respond to it?
So,
I would, if I could just actually, my thoughts on this, Pam, without, I haven't gone through the report in detail yet, but I think, so they have in their current report, there's a table that identifies the wells that are going to be sampling during the comprehensive sampling event, which is where they sample for PFAS. And so there's a list of, it's table 1E. And so I'm going through and checking to see what the distribution of those wells are, because I think that's one thing that could be a comment is, are these subset of wells that they're sampling for PFAS, is that sufficient, or should that be expanded? One other thing too, and just although they didn't really have a PFAS issue in their 2019 sampling, that's not entirely true in the sense of there was one high PFAS sampling hit that came out, which was in, well, GZW-7-2, where they had over 200 of mostly of a compound called PFOA. And they attributed that to potential leaching from a sample collection device. And so they thought that was a, it was, that could be true. It could be leaching out from this device. But part of this resampling event is I think that they need to go back and retest that in particular. And I don't know if that's the case yet. So if you're looking at it, one thing is they need to truth that original result, and if that was really a leaching from something else, or if that is actually a real result in groundwater that's present from a release or something. So
that
those
was in
are
2019,
yeah, that was in the 2019 sampling.
and GZW 72 didn't have a PFAS sample as part of this sampling at all.
Well, they haven't sampled
The
since
2024, yeah.
right. They haven't sampled. So in the table, so in the table that's in the annual report, the current report that we have, there's a table that talks about the comprehensive sampling event. GZW-72 is not listed on that table. And that may be because they don't consider that well to be usable because of that potential cross-contamination issue, but it's not listed. So there is a nearby well, GZW-71, but it doesn't look like that well is, oh no, that well is part of the comprehensive sampling for PFAS. So they are gonna sample the one for PFAS, but that's
gonna happen in 2025.
20, well, that's, I think, the 2025 sampling, I would think that it's going to follow the comprehensive sampling plan, but I am not sure if that's the case, because this comprehensive sampling is supposed to be done every 5 years, and the last one was done in April 2021. So I think a comment could be, is the 2025 sampling for PFAS going to follow the schedule outlined for the comprehensive sampling event? I expect that it will, but I'm not confident on that yet. And then it would be great if they could put together a figure showing those subset of wells that they're going to sample for PFAS, that we could see it on a map and look at the distribution.
And what was the well that was nearby GZW 72?
There's a well, GZW-71. And that one did have PFAS, but at a lower concentration.
So you
So
wanted a figure that says what wells will be sampled for PFAS in 2025?
Let me just check. There was supposed to be a replacement one. Let me just check and see if that's on the list. Let me just, they're supposed to put in a replacement well that was labeled MW-BS7-2. Okay, that is, okay, that's here and on the list, and it is slated for PFAS sampling. So I think that would be critical to make sure that they sample that replacement well.
So I think that the question that I have about whether PFAS, what we need to think about with PFAS is also some kind of modeling that says, well, which of these wells are within the sphere of influence of the pump and treat that's already happening? Is that a stupid question? Engineer?
N- it, I think having some additional groundwater data to know what the distribution of PFAS is, like that would identify whether that, or it shed some light on how useful that question is. Because right now we only have one sampling event, and it's, I think I want to have some additional data before looking at that. I mean, it may also be worthwhile to sample the influent and effluent from the system from the individual wells as well.
I didn't understand what you're talking about sampling there. You're talking about sampling for, oh, for the pump and treat systems, you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think actually one of the things that Bruce was interested in was the fact that when charcoal filters are full of PFAS, they can reach a point where there's so much in them that it costs more to dispose of them. So that was what he cared about, particularly as far as whether PFAS was getting in, and that they were not, that they didn't think that they were anywhere close to having to worry about that. Does that make sense, Kevin, or?
Yep, he's right. And based on, I at least when he talked about it, it made sense to me in the sense that at least from their initial sampling event, the PFAS concentrations in most of the wells were, I'll say, relatively low, tens or single digits. And so I think he's using that as a yardstick. It's not like he's at a site where it looks like they're pumping up thousands of part per trillion of PFAS. So I think he's looking and saying, yeah, it's something that you would normally be concerned about for a system. I think he has a concern about that, but he's probably saying my concern is low because these concentrations are pretty low. But
Okay,
again,
so
they need to resample and confirm that premise.
So I'm getting this, I want to make it clear that the next 5-year sampling is in 2026. And we would like to see them use the comprehensive sampling plan that they would use in 2026 for PFAS for the wells that they're going to do in 2025 as part of the annual. Is that true? So we get 2 years worth of data on them?
Well, I just don't know what they're planning to do next year, specifically what sampling that they're planning to do. My understanding is the comprehensive event, the last one was in April 2021. So the next one would be 5 years. So it would be April 2026. So are they going to do PFAS for
saying they
both?
might.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I just don't know. It's not clear. This report doesn't say. It lists out, here's our comprehensive event wells
Okay.
and what we'll sample for, but it's not clear if they're going to use that for 2025 or if they're going to do a subset of that for 2025.
So we're asking for clarification on what they're doing next year. And likewise, if PFAP is going to be included in the annual, in addition to the comprehensive. Sort of, am I capturing it sort of correct what our question is, or one of our questions that are?
Yeah, and we do want to have some actual discussion of this in person, where we're having this discussion and Bruce is part and Kara are part of it. Does that,
So that'll be in March.
yeah.
Which would be, normally a good time to, unless the ground is covered with snow, a good time to do a sidewalk too, and see how they're coming along.
So we want to talk about what the PFAS plan is in March. And Kevin, technically, is there any difference between them doing this in 2025 and 2026?
No.
So
I
as
just
long as
don't,
it's in the comprehensive, and as long as we're happy with what goes into the comprehensive plan as far as PFAS sampling, that it gets all the wells that we're concerned about, and that it gets all the chemicals that we're concerned about. It doesn't matter if that's 2026.
right, it says, and I've just checked the report, it says that their next comprehensive event will be conducted in April of 2026. So
Okay.
presumably they will sample all of those wells that are in that one table, and they'll include PFAS sampling for those wells that
Thank
they've
you.
got identified, but yeah, I'm not clear as to, Bruce said they're gonna sample for PFAS in 2025. I don't know which wells that they're gonna do.
Okay, so we still want to see the 2025 plan.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not hearing Ray.
I asked Pam, I don't know, my question, I think I sort of, but you got it, but what is the annual and what is in the comprehensive? You know, and date wise, and then likewise, are they gonna put the PFAS in the annual also as sort of, or at least for
In the
this year?
annual 2025.
Yeah, so.
So are you gonna write those comments with?
Pam, I will write them, send them to you, because I don't think I captured them all, but this way it will force me to get a little bit more smarter on this topic, so I will make the first stab at it. How about I put it that way?
Okay. And if Len has any more comments, he will send them directly to you
Yes,
after reading the report over. That one has the earlier,
and right, it has an earlier date, yes. So,
yeah.
okay, so, yeah, I am currently in Bloomington, Indiana, at my son's house. However, I'm not going back to Virginia for testing for the foreseeable future, so I will be actually in Concord again, which will be nice, so.
Great. So Len's gonna send comments to Ray. Ray's gonna write it up and pass it by Pam.
Oh.
And submit it by
6.
The 6th.
Yes.
Yep.
January 6th. And then it will be in the next document packet, next meeting packet.
Yeah, and I like to talk about future meetings after we're done with this topic. And before your report,
Okay.
Pam.
Okay. Nick had to step out for a minute, so I don't know.
Okay. So, are we done discussing this topic?
I think we're done discussing documents.
Yeah, so, future meetings, we have, according to what was scheduled, January 17th, the 21st, March 21st, and April 18th. I have not gone through the calendar going forward to see if there's anything on picking that, whatever, it's the third Friday. However, April 18th, I think we need to do something with, because that is not a week to be having meetings or with Patriots Day.
So let's just cancel the April meeting.
Yeah, I didn't know if we wanted to put something else on the schedule for earlier, just in case we needed it, with the intention to cancel it like a week earlier or not, but.
I'd say let's just get rid of April.
Okay,
And we have a meeting on March 21st. So, if we're gonna schedule a site visit to the trailer, to the site, we probably want to do it, before the 21st. Because then we can discuss what was said at the meeting.
so.
So
yeah,
we
and
want the Maximus meeting the site meeting to happen.
Yeah, maybe a week or so before our own meeting.
And I guess the question to you, Pam, and both, and Len also, how was that meeting scheduled? Do we pick the date or does the Maxes pick their date and?
They pick their date, but they usually listen to us because they want it. It's
Okay.
for us.
So.
That should be part of the comments on water quality. Because we said we wanted to discuss it, so putting that in there.
Right,
So the other question is, do we want a January meeting?
I would leave it on the schedule at the moment. We can cancel it if need be. I mean.
Okay. I think the expectation is that we are gonna cancel it. So is everybody happy with the 10:30 on Fridays time to meet?
Yeah, it's good. We can't do it much later than 10:30 because obviously they want us out of here by noon, so. So I think it works good. Meetings
Yeah.
usually last, an hour, maybe a little bit more, so, that gives us a chance to clean up and be out by, their closing time.
So, Ray, the 229 Main Street Advisory Task Force is done. So that's something that we can take off the agenda for future meetings after
Right.
today. However, we will, if you can, it really helps to make sure that the meeting room here is reserved and that the agendas get posted now for these. Because if we're trying at the last minute to decide to have a meeting and it's
Right.
Tuesday and somebody's running behind and we
Right.
don't get it posted in time, then it isn't a meeting.
Yeah, so you can post going forward, future, I mean. I guess the question is, do we just put down agendas through, let's say, January, February, March? Can we do all at this point? With just taking that out and we're approved minutes of previous meetings, and is that a proper?
I think that's a very appropriate way to
Yeah.
do it. In theory, you're supposed to have the date of the minutes that you're going to approve, and you're supposed to have specific documents that you're going to discuss in your agendas, but we often don't know those details well enough in advance, and it's easy enough to amend an agenda and post a new
Right.
agenda if we want, but, so I think posting something generic would be a good thing.
Okay,
So you're gonna post the agendas, or did you want me to try to do that?
I'll post the agendas for the next 3 meetings. And my understanding from your correspondence back and forth is the town will put the meeting ID numbers and the links into the agenda.
So I think you have, I think that it is one recurring meeting. And that
Okay,
it's good anytime. And even
Okay.
though it wasn't scheduled to start till 10:30 today, it had no problem starting at 10:15 for me when I was setting it up.
okay,
So, so I think it's a good link that you can just keep the same link.
okay,
And if not, then we will amend the agenda before the next meeting and get the
right,
link
so,
posted properly. Post agendas for, and can you make sure we have the meeting room reserved as well? Or do you want me to do that?
I can do that if you tell me who I need to reach out to.
So I've been going through Ebony, who's on maternity leave, so Melanie and I don't know I don't remember the name of the person who's filling in for her.
Okay,
Is the person that I usually speak to. So calling the Board of Health is the right,
okay,
or emailing. Did you get copies back of the the Zoom link information when you sent, that got sent to, when I sent stuff to Melanie and Ebony and you got copied on it, or I think you got copied on it. Did you get copies back as well?
I don't recall, but I will check, but I do know I got something about Ebony being out, which I knew, but so therefore I will go back and if I need to, well, we got time, but I will start sending something now and make sure I put a tickler that if I don't see something back, the first week of, the first week of January, I will push back again, so.
Okay. So I think we're good for scheduled meetings.
Yes, okay.
Nick, do you have a problem with, the Friday meetings at 10:30?
No, it just depends which week they are. I've got 2 weeks in January when I'm just not gonna be in town.
Okay.
And, I'm having a medical procedure early February. I don't know what the aftermath of
Right,
that'll be in
okay.
terms of availability, so.
But generally, this is a fine time to
It's
schedule a
okay,
meeting.
yeah,
for-
yeah, it's not okay, not a problem.
David, you're still okay with that too, right?
Yep.
I did get surprised. They used to be at 11, right? And it
Right,
messed
and-
me up a couple of times now because
Yeah.
there was an old calendar event out there that still had the.
And it still does say that, unfortunately, the
get-
calendar
Can
event
you get
doesn't.
that changed or get a new one?
That
It
has
says
to do with
10:30.
the posting. Yeah, I don't know how that automatically updates.
Okay, I'll ask the question.
Yeah, but make sure that it says 10:30 on the calendar item as well, not just,
Someone in planning can probably help you, or whoever helps you set up the
Yeah.
IT for this
Right,
stuff.
Yeah.
Can help
Thank
you
you.
because they
I'll
don't
just
do
point
it.
that, yeah, I'll point that out to them. It still says 11 or something, so that they appreciate that it has to be updated.
And that's why I was late for the last meeting. I didn't realize it till I walked in.
okay. Do you want me to update you on the 2229 task force?
Yes, please.
So the 2229 task force has finished their work. We have written our report. We've presented it to the select board. The task force recommends that the town move forward and make attempt, have our lawyers make an overture to EPA to start the process to start negotiations about what the terms for liability and title forgiveness and things like that are in order to move forward with taking the property and deciding what taking method and things like that. The select board has received that report, but they haven't read it yet or gotten back to us about it. And they're gonna have a meeting there's going to be a public hearing discussing the report. Terry, did you want to talk about that and about potentially future other committees? Because at this point, the task force is done with their work. We've written our report, and other than this public hearing, I don't know whether we're going to do any more. The task force is basically done.
Right, so the task force did a wonderful job. The report is online. I recommend that this committee look through it or read it carefully. You guys are a lot of your work is probably in the appendices. You're like the technical backstop to this whole task force's recommendations. Everything that they've recommended depends on you guys doing your really good job as being a watchdog. So you should have copies of it, either online or you can get a physical copy if you want. And when we have the public forum in January or February, that's a chance for the public to ask questions. And then the select board's going to decide. So far, they're looking very favorably on proceeding. But there could be some technical questions, and it would be wonderful if any or all of you could attend that public forum, even by Zoom. It will be, I think, in February. And it might be part of a regular select board meeting. So it's not a big time commitment. You can just, you know, be online at home and in case there's questions if you want, or come in. But you guys deserve a lot of the credit for the backup work that was done. Both your committee and the task force have really done a wonderful job. And I think the select board is probably going to proceed with having town council start the negotiations for acquisition.
We'll have to post that as an agenda if we're gonna have most of the committee members involved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where online is that available? I can,
So the town website has, web pages for each committee. And the
Okay.
2229 task force has their own web page and it's on that page.
okay, got it. Thank you.
If you have any questions about any of this, you can ask Pam or me. We'd be glad to, you know, assist, because now we're getting into the time where we're going to start communicating. David knows as well. We need to do a lot of communication with the town. And people that haven't been paying attention in the past might suddenly have some very technical questions. You guys, just listening to your meeting, the detail that you go into and the watchdog function that you provide is invaluable. We just could not proceed without all of your knowledge and experience. So it could be there are residents who have technical questions that only you guys can answer. I'm sure Bruce could answer, but it would be much better for, well, he can answer and you guys can answer, however.
So I want to point out that there are two things that differ in this report to the select board from the reuse report that was written before. The first is that we actually paid money for the lawyer to give us real information about what the options were, whether there was a clear path to clearing titles and getting liability protection so that the town would never be responsible for maintaining any of the pump and treat systems or have liability for what was happening there. And the other thing was that we actually hired a risk assessor company to do a risk assessment for reuse. They used the data that was collected by DeMaximus and previous groups, but they did the calculations themselves and thought out everything as possible. And they did indeed find that basically, except for that with the remedies in place, this was going to meet or exceed the standard for residential use for the entire site. Carlin, did you have a question?
Yeah, very briefly, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End, Finance Committee, speaking on my own behalf. However, this is a question for Pam and Len, maybe Terry. Is the 2229 Main Street Committee, your committee, going to have a representative on the town matrix working group? Because 2229 Main Street is one of the properties that's been identified for a town-wide assessment of planning. Will you folks have a representative on that?
Carlin, if I could answer that, we don't know any of that yet. The select board has not started writing a charge on any of that yet. But I assume you're recommending that one of these folks be in the working group, and I will pass that along.
You got it. Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
So this is, so I've heard about this, but I don't actually know the details of what the select board is doing. But this is what happens now that the task force is no longer.
No, this is part of the town's whole question of where do we have land that we can use for municipal purposes.
Right, okay, so you've heard more about this then.
Yeah, so that was at this last select, it was covered at the last select board meeting, so they're identifying land that's available, and then, so what about that land? That's what's gonna be discussed.
Right, there's going to be a task force that we're going to create to look at Peabody School, MCI, 2229 Main Street, Ripley School, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't have any details on that yet. We're just going to start looking at all of that and have probably a working group appointed to look at that.
So that, rather than make a committee that is just about redeveloping the Star Met site, we're gonna be putting it in perspective. So I don't know whether, I'm not sure whether somebody here needs to be a full-time person there, or whether we just need to have a liaison that's always checking on their work so that, and can always speak up. So, does that make sense, Carlin?
Absolutely. Whatever you folks need to play some kind of a role, and because you're going to be asked the hard questions. Thanks much.
So, thank you, Terry. And thank you, Carleen. Is there any other comments regarding the report from the task force at this point in time? If there's no other business besides that, is there any public comment? I know that we've had Kevin, we already asked him to speak at several points, and likewise Terry's spoken, but and likewise Carleen, but is there any other additional public comments at this point? If not, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.